The massive alien ship appeared over Washington, D.C. on a clear Tuesday morning. It hung in the sky, silent and still, for 6 hours before making contact. When they finally spoke, the aliens called themselves the Galactic Confederation. Frank Donovan watched the news from his office at Fort Benning. The grizzled Army Ranger Major had seen many things in his 20 years of service, but nothing like this. "Looks like we've got company," said Lieutenant Olivia Martinez, stepping into his office. She was young but already respected for her sharp mind and unconventional thinking. "Let's hope they're friendly," Donovan replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. It took 3 months of careful diplomacy before Earth officially joined the Confederation, not as equals, but as a developing protectorate. The aliens, particularly the dominant Viraxians, considered humans physically inferior. Humans were shorter, weaker, and slower than most Confederation species. "Your kind has potential," said Ambassador Zorix, a tall blue-skinned Viraxian with 4 arms. "But you are still evolving." The president smiled politely, but everyone in the room felt the sting of the words. 6 months after first contact, the Confederation proposed a military exchange program. 10 elite warriors from 5 alien species would train with human forces. The official reason was cultural understanding. The unofficial reason was clear to everyone involved. They wanted to study human military structures before deciding how to use Earth forces. Major Donovan received his orders directly from the Joint Chiefs. "They think we're weak, Frank," said General Harris. "Show them otherwise." "Yes, sir," Donovan replied. The aliens arrived at Fort Benning on a hot summer day. They stepped from their transport with confident strides, looking down, literally and figuratively, at the human welcoming committee. Kileth, the Viraxian military officer in charge, stood nearly 8 feet tall. His blue skin gleamed in the sunlight, and his 4 arms were crossed in different positions, showing his rank. "We are honored to participate in this educational experience," Kileth said, his translator making the words sound flat. The slight pause made it clear what he really thought of training with humans. The physical evaluations came first. The aliens outperformed humans in nearly every category. They ran faster, lifted more, and showed greater endurance. "Impressive for your size," Kileth told Private William Carter, a young recruit who had pushed himself to match the slowest alien's pace. Billy Carter just nodded, too out of breath to respond to the backhanded compliment. That night, the aliens talked among themselves in their barracks. "This will be simple," Kileth said. "We complete this training, report back to the Confederation, and they will understand that humans need at least a century more development before they can contribute meaningfully to our military efforts." Nexara, a cat-like Philidian with golden eyes, wasn't so sure. "I sense something about these humans. They seem resilient." "Resilience without strength is meaningless," replied Grox, a massive rhinoceros-like tauren. The next morning, Major Donovan stood before the aliens at 500 hours, while it was still dark outside. Behind him stood Sergeant Lisa Coleman and 4 other drill instructors. "Welcome to basic training," Donovan said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "From this moment on, you're no longer elite warriors. You're recruits. You have no rank here. You will address all instructors as Sergeant or Sir. You will speak when spoken to. You will do what you're told, when you're told to do it, how you're told to do it." Kileth stepped forward. "This is unnecessary. We are already trained warriors." "Drop and give me 50, Donovan said calmly. "Excuse me. Push-ups, 50 of them. Now." Kileth laughed. "This is beneath me." Donovan stepped closer, looking up at the alien but somehow seeming taller. "Nothing is beneath a soldier following orders. That's your first lesson." In the back of the group, Ambassador Zorix watched carefully. He sent a private message to Viraxian High Command. Initial assessment proceeding as expected. Humans attempting psychological dominance to compensate for physical inferiority. He had no idea how wrong he was. Kileth did the 50 push-ups easily, His 4 arms made the exercise almost laughable. The other aliens followed, each completing the task with varying degrees of effort, but all finishing faster than a human could. "Impressive," said Major Donovan without emotion. "Now everyone get in formation." 5-mile run before breakfast. The aliens exchanged glances. This was still easy for them. Kleth smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The run was nothing for beings with superior strength and endurance. Even Grox, the heaviest of the group at nearly 500 pounds, finished well ahead of the human instructors. "Is this your training?" Kleth asked, not even breathing hard. "We could do this all day." Donovan just checked his watch. "Good, because we will." Over the next 12 hours, the aliens learned what basic training really meant. They ran again and again. They crawled through mud under barbed wire. They climbed walls. They carried heavy logs as teams. They did more push-ups, sit-ups, and jumping jacks than they could count. The physical tasks themselves weren't difficult for their superior bodies. It was the relentless pace that surprised them. "When do we rest?" asked Ziv, the insectoid Arthean with perfect memory but poor adaptability. "When the day is done," replied Surgeon Coleman. "When is the day done?" Ziv asked. "When I say it's done," she answered. By sunset, even the mighty aliens felt the strain. Not physical exhaustion. They were still stronger than humans, but mental fatigue from the constant demands and pressure. Lieutenant Martinez observed from a distance, taking notes on their reactions. She paid special attention to how they handled stress and uncertainty. The aliens were used to training that focused on their natural abilities. Human training was different. It was about pushing beyond limits, adapting to discomfort, and working as a unit. At dinner, the aliens sat together away from the human recruits. "This is not real training," said Killeth, picking at the bland food. "They are just trying to annoy us." Nixera, the agile Philidian, disagreed. "I'm not so sure. Have you noticed how the human recruits support each other? They move as one unit despite their differences." "A weak species must cooperate to survive," Killeth replied. "We have no need for such tactics." After dinner, when the aliens expected rest, Sergeant Jackson ordered everyone to clean the barracks. "But we just ate," protested Grox. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Jackson shouted, his face inches from Grox's much larger one. The overnight hours brought more surprises. At 100, alarms blared through the barracks. "Gas attack drill. Masks on," shouted the instructors. The aliens scrambled in confusion, while the human recruits moved with practiced precision. Billy Carter noticed Nixera struggling with her mask. Despite the rules against helping, he showed her how to secure it properly. "Thanks," she whispered. "Stick with me," he said. "It gets worse before it gets better." By dawn, the aliens began to understand. This training wasn't just about physical tasks. It was about functioning under pressure, discomfort, and exhaustion. Day 2 brought weapons training. Here, the aliens expected to excel again. Many had centuries of combat experience, but human weapons were different, designed to compensate for human limitations. "Your weapons are primitive," said Killeth, examining an M4 carbine. "Maybe," said Major Donovan. "But it's not the weapon that matters most. It's the soldier using it." During target practice, the aliens hit their marks with precision, when conditions were perfect. But when Donovan added complications, shooting while tired, in bad weather, under simulated enemy fire, the results changed. Lieutenant Martinez approached Ambassador Zorix, who watched from the sidelines. "What do you think so far?" she asked. Zorix's expression was unreadable. "Interesting methods, but I fail to see how this makes effective warriors." "The first week is just the beginning," Martins replied. "We're not building warriors yet. We're breaking down individuals so we can build something stronger. A team." That night, Killeth sent his own private message to Varaxian High Command. "Human training methods unusual. Emphasis on psychological stress rather than skill development. Purpose unclear. Will continue to observe. In his sleeping pod, Grox whispered to Nixera, "These humans are strange. They make training harder than it needs to be." Nixera watched Billy Carter help another recruit with their gear before lights out. "Maybe," she said, "they know something we don't." 2 weeks into training, the aliens began to struggle, not with the physical tasks. They still outperformed humans in raw strength and speed, but with something they hadn't expected: endurance of a different kind. "Again," shouted Sergeant Jackson as Killeth finished the obstacle course for the 5th time that morning. The tall Varaxian's blue skin had taken on a pale tone. His 4 arms, usually moving with perfect coordination, now seemed slightly out of sync. "I have completed your course 5 times, Killeth said. "I have proven my superiority." Jackson stepped closer. "You've proven nothing except that you can follow simple directions. Now do it again, and this time, carry Carter with you." Billy Carter stood nearby, trying not to smile as the alien's eyes widened. "Carry him, but that serves no purpose. In battle," Jackson said, "you might need to carry a wounded comrade. Now move." Killeth completed the course again, with Billy on his back. The human wasn't heavy for the alien's strength, but after 2 weeks of minimal sleep and constant activity, even Killeth was feeling the strain. In the classroom that afternoon, Lieutenant Martinez gave a lesson on human military history. "Throughout our history," she explained, "humans have often fought against enemies with superior numbers or technology. We've had to develop strategies to overcome these disadvantages." She showed images from ancient battles to modern conflicts. The Battle of Thermopylae, the American Revolution, guerrilla warfare in various conflicts. These all show how determination and tactics can overcome raw power. Nixera found this fascinating. On her world, battles were won by the strongest forces with the best technology. The idea of a weaker force winning through strategy was new to her. Ziv raised a limb, but surely superior strength always prevails eventually. "Not always," Martins answered. "Humans have learned that victory doesn't always go to the strongest. Sometimes it goes to those who can endure the most pain, adapt to changing conditions, or simply refuse to give up." That evening, the training took a new turn. Major Donovan announced a 50-mile march through rough terrain, with full packs, in the rain. "The weather forecast shows a storm coming," he said. "Perfect training conditions." Killeth laughed. "Your attempt to create difficulty is amusing. Our species evolved on worlds with far harsher environments than a little rain." Donovan smiled. "Then this should be easy for you." The march began at midnight. The rain came down in sheets. The terrain was muddy, steep, and filled with obstacles. The aliens started confidently, moving ahead of the human recruits. By mile 20, things had changed. Grox was struggling with the mud that reached up to his knees. Ziv's exoskeleton wasn't designed for constant exposure to water. Even Nixera, despite her natural agility, was finding it hard to maintain her balance on the slippery slopes. Only Killeth maintained his pace, refusing to show weakness. But inside, he was confused. This wasn't what he had expected from training with an inferior species. At mile 35, during a particularly heavy downpour, Killeth slipped on a steep incline and fell hard. One of his arms twisted painfully beneath him. Billy Carter, who had been keeping pace nearby, immediately came to his aid. "Are you okay?" he asked, offering a hand. Killeth wanted to refuse, to show he needed no help from a human, but the pain in his arm was intense. "I require a moment to recover," he admitted. Billy nodded, not mocking or gloating. "Take your time. We'll get there together." For the first time, Killeth felt something shift in his perception of humans. That night, in their temporary shelters halfway through the march, the aliens talked quietly. "I don't understand these humans," Grox said. "They push us through these meaningless exercises day after day." "Not meaningless," Nixera replied. They're teaching us something, but not in the way we teach on our worlds. Caleth remained silent, nursing his injured arm and his wounded pride. At that moment, Ambassador Zorix entered their shelter, looking concerned. "News from the Confederation," he said. "There's been a border skirmish with the Drachnid. All training programs are to be accelerated." The aliens exchanged worried glances. The Drachnid were known as fierce warriors, expanding their territory through conquest. "How much time do we have?" asked Caleth. "Not enough," Zorix replied. "The High Command wants results from this exchange program immediately. They need to know if humans can fight." Nixera looked towards the human side of the camp, where Billy and the others were checking equipment, helping each other despite their exhaustion. "I think," she said softly, "they already know how." The training shifted after the news about the Drachnid. Major Donovan moved the aliens and human recruits to advanced combat training sooner than planned. "Today we learn about survival and combat in hostile environments," Donovan announced. They stood at the edge of the Nevada desert, the sun already beating down mercilessly. Caleth's arm had healed quickly thanks to his species' advanced biology. He stood tall again, but something had changed in his eyes. He watched the humans more carefully now, studying their methods rather than dismissing them. Captain Ryan Miller, a Special Forces instructor with a scared face and calm eyes, took over the day's training. "In this exercise, you'll be divided into mixed teams, humans and aliens together," Miller explained. "Your objective is to cross 20 miles of desert, locate the enemy position, gather intelligence, and return to base. You'll have limited water and supplies." Nixera found herself teamed with Billy Carter and 2 other humans. Caleth was placed with Sergeant Coleman and her squad. Grox and Ziv joined other human teams. "This is inefficient," Caleth complained to Martinez. "Our abilities are not being properly utilized in these mixed groups." Martinez looked at him steadily. "In real combat, you don't always get to choose your allies. You work with what you have." The desert exercise began at noon, when the heat was most intense. The teams spread out, each taking different routes to the objective. Billy's team moved carefully, conserving water and energy. Nixera was surprised by their pace. "We could move faster," she suggested. Billy shook his head. "Not about speed. It's about lasting. The desert will kill you if you rush." In Caleth's team, tensions rose as water supplies dwindled faster than planned. The aliens drank more than humans due to their larger bodies. By late afternoon, they were running dangerously low. "We should return to base," one alien suggested. "Mission first," said Sergeant Coleman firmly. "We adapt and overcome." She showed them how to find water in unlikely places, from certain plants, by digging in dry riverbeds, by collecting condensation overnight. Caleth watched in growing amazement as the humans applied knowledge that had clearly been passed down through generations of warfare and survival. Meanwhile, Billy's team reached a narrow canyon. According to their maps, it was the fastest route to the objective. As they entered, the sky darkened suddenly. "Flash flood," shouted one of the human recruits. "Get to high ground." Nixera was confused. There had been no rain, but she followed their lead. Seconds later, a wall of water rushed through the canyon, powerful and fast. Ziv, who had been scouting ahead, was caught in the flood. The water slammed the insectoid alien against rocks. Despite his exoskeleton, Ziv was in danger of drowning. Without hesitation, Billy plunged into the raging water. He was a strong swimmer, but the current was powerful. Still, he fought his way to Ziv and pulled the alien to safety. On the canyon rim, soaking wet and breathing hard, Ziv looked at Billy with new understanding. "You risked your life. I am 3 times stronger than you. Why would you do this?" Billy shrugged. "You're part of the team." That night, as the various teams made camp, Ambassador Zorix received a private communication from Varaxian High Command. He read it twice, his expression troubled. Lieutenant Martinez noticed. Bad news. Zorix hesitated. The Varaxian military is reassessing their evaluation of human capabilities. Is that good or bad? Martins asked. I'm not sure, Zorix admitted. The next morning, Captain Miller gathered everyone for a special lesson. Today we talk about pain, he said. Specifically, how to function despite it. He showed them techniques for continuing to fight while injured. The aliens were disturbed by how matter-of-factly the humans discussed enduring severe wounds. Your species seems to have an unusual relationship with pain, Khalith observed to Major Donovan. Pain is information, Donovan replied. Sometimes you need to acknowledge it and act on it. Other times, you need to set it aside until the mission is complete. Khalith thought about his injured arm during the march, how Billy had helped him without comment or judgment. I believe, Khalith said slowly, I am beginning to understand humans better. Donovan smiled slightly. Good, because understanding each other might be the only way we survive what's coming. That evening, urgent news arrived from Confederation headquarters. The Drachnid were advancing toward Earth's space faster than expected. The news about the Drachnid changed everything. Training shifted to full combat readiness. Major Donovan announced a joint human-alien exercise against automated combat drones. This will be as close to real combat as we can make it, Donovan explained as they gathered at the training grounds. The drones are programmed to fight like Drachnid warriors. Khalith examined the weapons they were issued. Training versions of standard rifles and sidearms. These are not Confederation weapons, he noted. You need to learn our weapons, Donovan replied, in case we fight together. The exercise was set for dawn the next day. That night, Ambassador Zorix called the aliens to a private meeting. The Confederation has concerns, Zorix said, his voice low. This exercise tomorrow, observe the humans carefully. We need to know how they perform under pressure. Nixera frowned. We've been training with them for weeks. Haven't we been observing them all along? Zorix hesitated. The High Command needs more specific information about their combat effectiveness. Khaleth's eyes narrowed. You're not telling us everything, Ambassador. Before Zorix could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. Red lights flashed. Sergeant Coleman burst into the room. Exercise has been moved up. Unknown hostiles have breached the perimeter. All personnel to combat positions. The aliens followed Coleman to the armory where they were issued weapons, real ones this time, not training versions. This isn't the exercise, Grox asked, confused. No, Coleman replied grimly. Someone's attacking the base. Outside, chaos reigned. Explosions lit up the night sky. Soldiers ran to defensive positions. Through the smoke, strange figures moved, not the training drones they had expected, but something else. Drachnid scouts, Khalith shouted, recognizing the enemy from briefings. Major Donovan appeared, shouting orders. Form up. Mixed squads. Defend the command center. Khalith found himself with Donovan and 4 human soldiers. They took position behind a concrete barrier. The first wave of attackers came fast. They were reptilian, with scaled armor and weapons that fired energy pulses. The humans and aliens returned fire. Khalith had fought in simulations before, but this was different. Real danger. Real fear. For a moment, he froze. Khalith. Left flank. Donovan shouted. The sharp command snapped Khalith back to focus. He turned and fired, taking down 2 Drachnid warriors. Across the compound, Billy and Nixera worked together with perfect coordination. Billy would draw fire while Nixera, with her superior speed, would flank the enemy. Behind you, Billy warned as a Drachnid appeared from the smoke. Nixera spun and fired in one fluid motion, dropping the attacker. Grox used his massive strength to move a disabled vehicle, creating cover for a group of human medics treating the wounded. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, the remaining Drachnid retreated, leaving their dead behind. In the command center, the truth came out. This hadn't been a random attack. Intelligence officers revealed it had been a test. Drachnid infiltrators evaluating the effectiveness of human-alien coordination. Ambassador Zorix looked uncomfortable as he faced the group. "There is something I must tell you," he said. The exchange program had multiple purposes. Lieutenant Martinez crossed her arms. "We figured that much." "Officially, it was cultural exchange," Zorix continued. "For most Confederation species, it was to assess human capabilities. But for Varaxians specifically," he paused, "it was to determine if humans could serve as reliable shock troops in the coming conflict." The room went silent. "Shock troops," Donovan repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "You mean cannon fodder." "That was the initial assessment," Zorix admitted. "Humans seemed physically weaker, but numerous and expendable." The human officers were outraged. Tension filled the room. But before the situation could escalate further, Kaleth stepped forward. "That assessment was wrong," he said firmly. "Tonight proved it. The humans fought with skill and courage. Their adaptability and tactical innovation surpassed our own." He turned to face Zorix directly. "The Varaxians, all of the Confederation, have misjudged humans. They are not shock troops. They are warriors worthy of respect and equal partnership." The room remained tense, but Kaleth's words had an impact. Slowly, the human officers nodded in acknowledgement. As they dispersed to secure the base and tend to the wounded, Martinez approached Kaleth. "Thank you," she said simply. Kaleth nodded. "I spoke only truth." Their conversation was interrupted by a communications officer rushing in. "Sir," he called to Donovan, "emergency transmission from Confederation fleet. The Drachnid have launched a major offensive. They've attacked the Jupiter outpost." The command center erupted into activity. Officers shouted orders, screens flashed with incoming data, and communications channels buzzed with urgent messages. Major Donovan studied the tactical display showing the Jupiter outpost. The Drachnid forces had launched a surprise attack with at least 3 warships. "The outpost has minimal defenses," said Lieutenant Martinez. "They need help fast." Ambassador Zorix shook his head. "The nearest Confederation battle fleet is 3 days away." "We're closer," Donovan said. "Earth can respond faster." "With what?" Zorix asked. "Your ships aren't equipped for space combat against Drachnid vessels." "The U.S. Intrepid is," Donovan replied. "It's our newest ship, built with Confederation technology. It can reach Jupiter in 12 hours. Zorix still looked doubtful. "But your crews lack experience in space combat." Kaleth stepped forward. "Then we will go with them." The room fell silent. "We?" asked Zorix. "The alien trainees," Kaleth explained. "We know Drachnid tactics. We have space combat experience. And now we have trained with humans." General Harris, who had been listening quietly, nodded. "A joint team, small and fast. It might work." Within an hour, the mission was approved. A quick response team of 20 humans and the 10 alien trainees would board the U.S. Intrepid and head to Jupiter. As they prepared their gear, Billy approached Nick Serra. "First real space mission," he said, checking his weapon. "Any advice?" Nick Serra's golden eyes were serious. "Space combat is different. No gravity, no air outside the ship. But the principles are the same. Protect your team. Complete the mission." Billy nodded, just like training. The U.S. Intrepid was sleek and modern, a blend of human design and Confederation technology. As they boarded, Kaleth was impressed by the ship's combat readiness. Major Donovan would lead the mission, with Kaleth as his second-in-command. The humans and aliens were divided into 4 mixed fire teams. "Our mission is simple," Donovan explained during the journey to Jupiter. "The outpost has 3 key sections: communications, power core, and command. We need to secure all 3 and hold until reinforcements arrive." The tactical display showed the layout of the outpost and the last known positions of Drachnid forces. "They fight differently in space," Killeth warned. They use the environment, tight corridors, airlocks, life support systems, as weapons. So do we, Sergeant Coleman replied with a grim smile. The Intrepid reached Jupiter space and immediately detected 2 Drachnid ships near the outpost. The human captains skillfully maneuvered to avoid detection, using Jupiter's mini-moons for cover. "We'll dock at the emergency airlock," the captain said. "You'll have to fight your way in." As they prepared for boarding, Ambassador Zorix approached Major Donovan. "I'm coming with you," he said. "This isn't a diplomatic mission," Donovan replied. "No," Zorix agreed, "but I need to see for myself what humans and Confederation species can accomplish together." The boarding went smoothly until they reached the main corridor. There they met heavy Drachnid resistance. Energy weapons fired from both sides, filling the corridor with light and smoke. "Push forward," Donovan ordered. Killeth moved alongside him, firing with precision. The human-alien teams advanced methodically, using tactics they had practiced on Earth. In the zero gravity of a damaged section, Nixera's agility proved invaluable. She moved between handholds with ease, flanking the Drachnid position. They reached the communications center first and secured it. Lieutenant Martinez immediately sent a message to both Earth and the Confederation fleet, updating them on the situation. "2 sections to go," Donovan said. "We need to split up. Killeth, take your team to the power core. Mine will secure command." As they separated, the Drachnid launched a counterattack. In the confusion, a blast hit near Donovan and Zorix. The explosion sent them both flying against a bulkhead. Donovan's suit was damaged, leaking air. Without hesitation, he sealed the breach with his hand, but he was losing blood from a wound in his side. "Go," he told Killeth. "Complete the mission." But Killeth didn't move. Instead, he applied a sealing patch to Donovan's suit and a medical gel to his wound. "No one gets left behind," Killeth said, repeating the phrase he had learned from human training. "We finish this together." With Killeth supporting the injured Donovan, they fought their way toward the command center, where the fiercest battle awaited. 3 months after the Jupiter incident, Killeth stood before the Confederation Security Council. The large chamber was filled with representatives from all member species. Earth had its own delegation now, no longer sitting in the observer section. The joint human-alien force succeeded where a conventional Confederation response would have failed, Killeth stated. "We reached the outpost in time, secured all key areas, and held position until reinforcements arrived." The Security Council members murmured among themselves. What Killeth didn't mention was how close they had come to failure. How Billy and Nixera had made a desperate last stand at the outpost's core. How Grox had used his massive strength to hold a pressure door closed, while others escaped a decompression event. And Killeth didn't tell them about the final confrontation in the command center, where he had used human close-quarters combat techniques to defeat the Drachnid commander. Techniques that would have been considered primitive by Varaxian standards just months earlier. Based on the performance at Jupiter, Killeth continued, "I recommend that Earth be promoted from Protectorate to full security partner status. On Earth, Major Donovan, now Colonel Donovan, watched the proceedings via secure transmission. His wound had healed, leaving yet another scar to add to his collection. Beside him sat Lieutenant Martinez, recently promoted to captain. "He's doing well," Martins commented. Donovan nodded. He learned how to make a proper military presentation. Clear, direct, and just enough detail. The Confederation vote was unanimous. Earth would become a full security partner, with its military forces integrated into Confederation defense planning. When the session ended, Ambassador Zorix approached Killeth. "You've changed," Zorix observed. "We all have," Killeth replied. "The humans taught us more than we expected." Zorix looked thoughtful. "The High Command is recommending that Fort Benning become the first interspecies combat training center. They want more Confederation warriors to experience human training methods." Killeth smiled. "They will find it educational." Back on Earth, the changes were already happening. Fort Benning was being expanded to accommodate alien trainees from across the Confederation. Colonel Donovan and Captain Martinez were developing the first official human-alien joint training program. Billy Carter, now a sergeant, found himself in a new role: training instructor. His first class would include 30 aliens from 7 different species. Nervous? Nix-Era asked him as they prepared the training grounds. She had chosen to stay on Earth as part of the exchange program's permanent staff. A little, Billy admitted, but they need what we can teach them. Grox had stayed too, establishing a cross-species engineering corps that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Humans build differently, Grox explained to his Confederation superiors. They find solutions we would never consider because they must overcome their physical limitations. The Drachnid threat continued. Intelligence reports showed they were regrouping, planning their next move. But now they would face a united response: human determination combined with Confederation technology and resources. On the last day before the new training cycle began, K'leth returned to Earth. He found Colonel Donovan at the obstacle course, watching the sunset. "Our new trainees arrive tomorrow," Donovan said. K'leth nodded. "They come with high expectations. The story of Jupiter has spread throughout the Confederation." They watched as a group of human recruits completed their evening run, tired but moving with purpose. "When I first came here," K'leth said, "I thought humans were physically inferior. I believed that was all that mattered in a warrior." "And now?" Donovan asked. "Now I understand that the Confederation underestimated not just human physical resilience, but their spirit. Your kind refuses to accept limitations. You adapt, improvise, and overcome. You don't leave anyone behind." Donovan smiled slightly. "That's part of our creed. I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy." K'leth had learned the rest of the words during his time on Earth. "And under no circumstances will I ever embarrass my country," he continued. As darkness fell, they watched the lights of the expanded base come on one by one. Human and alien personnel moved about, preparing for the next day's training. "The Drachnid thought they could divide us," K'leth said. "Instead, they united us." Donovan nodded. "That's another human trait. We're at our best when things are at their worst." Tomorrow, a new group of aliens would learn what K'leth and the others had discovered: that true strength comes in many forms, and that humans, despite their seeming physical weakness, possessed a kind of power that couldn't be measured in traditional ways. A power that, when combined with the strengths of other species, might be the greatest force the galaxy had ever seen.